Be thankful that someone as plain and dreary as you even got embraced by me. Sorry, but I've got a younger lover. It was a sudden event. My husband, who had been as gentle as a gentleman up until now, was hurling insults at me with a fearsome intensity. This was at the entrance of our home. I, who had just returned home, couldn't comprehend the situation. What do you mean? I hoped it was just a dream and that I would wake up soon. I shouted with all my might while trembling in front of my ruthless husband. That's what I said, didn't I? I've never been interested in an old lady like you from the start. I've achieved my purpose with our marriage. Just sign the divorce papers and get out quickly. As I trembled in fear, my husband raised his voice even more. The way he looked down and insulted me was like a demon out of a hellish painting. What purpose? And telling me to get out, this house is. Then, an unbelievable truth came out of my husband's mouth. I've sold the house. I plan to divorce you and live luxuriously with my lover with that money. I was speechless at the unexpected words. All the happy days we had spent together, the kind words and smiles of my husband I had believed in, were all lies, merely means to achieve his goal. I had been deceived by my husband. My husband would grasp a new happiness, and I would be left to fall into the dark loneliness, losing everything. That was the end my husband wished for the two of us. However, if he knew my true identity, he would turn the tables immediately. I understand. I vowed to make sure this man could never walk proudly under the sun again. I vowed in my heart so. From this moment when I clenched my fist, my rapid advancement began. My name is Sally, 42 years old. I live in a high-rise apartment a little away from the city center, and the sparkling night view from the high floor is breathtakingly beautiful. My workplace is located in a towering skyscraper in downtown, where I handle numerous office tasks daily such as document and sales support, and meeting preparations. While I may seem to lead a glamorous life, I am single and do not have a lover. Dressed in a plain suit like a job-hunting student, with my black hair tied back in one, and wearing black-rimmed glasses. Men don't approach a woman who looks like me. Furthermore, at work, I'm called an old maid behind my back, and because I leave exactly on time to pick up my child from daycare, my female colleagues dump their work on me every day. For the past few years, I haven't been able to punch out on time. Just commuting between home and work. The night sky I look up to every day with a sigh, is the only thing that gently wraps around me. When I get home, the first thing I do is pray to the smiling portraits of my parents. It has become my daily morning and evening routine. Mom, Dad, I'm home. Of course, they always greet me silently with kindness. My parents passed away 10 years ago. In a collision between their car and a large truck. Life is tragically fleeting. No matter how much I called their names when I rushed to the hospital, they never came back. With no siblings and distant relatives, I became completely alone. I don't ask for great happiness. Simple is fine. I don't desire luxury, just to continue this life uneventfully without losing anything more. One April evening, after finishing overtime, I was walking home through the streets that felt livelier than usual. The sky had darkened completely, and the chilly air made me shiver. Yet, the warmth of the town didn't fade, and people with flushed faces were merrily noisy. Ah, today is Friday. Probably, there are welcome parties happening all around. As I quickly made my way home, passing by the cherry trees along the street lit up by many lights, unable to even sleep. It happened. There was a dull thud, and suddenly my view was blocked. It smelled strongly of alcohol. It seems I had bumped into someone completely drunk. Just as I was about to apologize and move away, the drunken man approached me. Reeking of alcohol, he was probably complaining about me, but his words were slurred. Terrified, I tried to escape, but more of the drunk's friends kept coming. Surrounded by a circle of drunkards, I was trapped. That's when it happened. A man pushed through the crowd and rushed to my side. He stood between us and argued with the drunkards for a few minutes. But his firm demeanor stopped them from any further aggression. Then, the man took my hand and we started walking quickly. I couldn't see his face, but as we walked, I felt my heart race at the sight of his tall figure wrapped in a trench coat. We're safe here. There sure are a lot of drunks out tonight. They're usually weak but get bold with some liquor in them, especially around women. It's the worst. He looked down at me with a fresh smile. Being stared at so closely by such a handsome man made me too embarrassed to look up. My heartbeat intensified, and my face grew even warmer. Are you okay? It must have been scary, but you're safe now. I couldn't take it anymore. Being treated kindly by such a handsome man, I, who am not used to men, felt overwhelmed by embarrassment. I should get out of here quickly. Oh, thank you. You really saved me. I turned away from the man and started walking. Wait. It's not safe for a woman to walk alone on the streets at night. I'll walk you to your door. The man chased after me. I'm fine. Plus, I'm just an old lady. Look, I might get hassled, but nobody's gonna attack me. Walking with such a wonderful man, it would surely embarrass him to be seen with me. He grabbed my hand again. I instinctively turned around and looked up at him. That was the first time I saw his eyes. He was staring intently at me too. What are you talking about? It must have been frightening after such an ordeal. I'm worried about you. I'll walk you home. Drawn into his clear eyes, I found myself nodding without thinking. Thank you so much. Then, we enjoyed some light-hearted conversation on the way home. His innocent smile warmed my heart, and his kindness in guiding me over curbs and through narrow paths made my heart flutter. It was a first-time experience for me. Thank you very much. This is my home. The 15 minutes I spent with him flew by, and we arrived in front of the apartment building I live in. Then the man looked up at the apartment building in surprise. It was understandable. You wouldn't imagine someone as plain as me living in such a high-rise apartment. Do you live here with your parents in such a nice apartment? Normally, I would be hesitant to share personal details with a stranger, but I owed this man a debt and felt I could trust him. My parents have passed away. I bought this apartment in my name since I'll probably be single for life. I laughed, and he smiled gently at me. Hey. Could I perhaps offer you something as a thank you for today? It's not like me to say such things. I was even surprised at myself. But I truly wanted to express my gratitude, and I also wanted to spend a little more time with this man. He nodded kindly, and we exchanged contact information before parting. His name is John, 40 years old. He was a kind-hearted man. That night, I found it hard to fall asleep. His calm smile kept coming back to me, and before I knew it, he was all I could think about. Even though I'm an old lady. At the age of 42, previously untouched by romance, I had fallen in love with him. Later, he accepted my brave invitation to dine at a French restaurant in a hotel. A woman shouldn't be paying, he said as he stopped me from settling the bill and offered his own card instead. I had intended to treat him, but ended up being treated myself. On another day off, we went to an aquarium together. He, being fond of fishing and water sports and knowledgeable about fish, introduced me to a world unknown to me. Sally, you are truly humble and wonderful. It feels like a miracle that we met while you were still single. His occasional shy smile made me blush. Thus, our relationship rapidly grew closer and naturally turned into a romantic one. And a few months later, he proposed to me. It was during a dinner on a cruise ship, popular for its nighttime views. He gently offered me a ring in a scenario I had secretly dreamt of. Looking into his serious eyes like never before, I nodded. It was an incredible Cinderella story. However, I had one concern about marrying him. Children. At 42, it was possible that I might not be able to have children. As if seeing through my worries, he held my hand and whispered, I just want to be with you, Sally. Even if we can't have children, we'll be happy together. He always enveloped me with kindness. I felt continually saved by him. Thus, we got married and began our happy life together in the apartment I owned. Half a year has passed since then. Our married life has been smooth, with each of us dedicated to our work during the day and spending quiet evenings together. However, my concern was confirmed, and despite several attempts, we have not been able to conceive a child. Having kids is a blessing, and there's no need to rush. Plus, don't blame yourself. It could be me who has the issue," he said with his usual kind smile, trying to console me as I worried about my age. Yet, I couldn't give up on my dream. I wanted a child, even if just one. So, I went to a renowned obstetrics and gynecology clinic to learn about fertility treatments. They're expensive, but advanced fertility treatments are an option. This would require my husband's cooperation. However, he frowned upon the idea of fertility treatments and showed reluctance. Do we really need to go that far? There are plenty of happy couples without children. I don't want us to stress about having to conceive, he said coldly before walking out of the living room alone. Apparently, I had upset him. Perhaps I had pushed too hard on my own due to my desire for a child. We should have discussed it more as a couple. Maybe I had been too demanding about checking my ovulation dates and not missing opportunities. All my actions must have put pressure on him. After that, our intimate life ceased, and he started to sleep with his back turned to me. It was my fault. I had angered him. It's too late for regrets. But 6 months have passed without being able to mend our relationship. Hey, isn't our first wedding anniversary coming up soon? How about we go out to dinner for a change? Maybe on that cruise ship we have fond memories of. It's a weekday, so there are still seats available. We can still make a dinner reservation. I hoped that spending a fun time together, just like old times, might bring his feelings back. With a glimmer of hope, I boldly made the invitation. Initially surprised and hesitant, he nodded when I mentioned I'd treat this time. Yeah, dining out sounds good. I remember the food being delicious there. Relieved by his softened expression, I immediately made the reservation and looked forward to the day. On the promised day, I finished work on time for a change, went home, changed into a dress I rarely wear, and headed to the meeting place. The clicking of my heels buoyed my spirits. My husband would surely be surprised to see me like this. I arrived at the boarding area at the harbor. My husband was not there yet. Having arrived a bit early, I decided to wait for him. Since getting married, we had stopped having dates like this. But today was a special day. I waited, excited, feeling just like I used to. Passengers boarded one after another, but my husband still hadn't arrived. I checked the time. The departure was imminent. Despite numerous attempts, I couldn't get a response from him, and slowly anxiety began to take over. Though approached several times by the cruise staff, I could only wait for him. Then, the ship departed right on schedule, and I was left alone at the harbor. Still, I waited, believing he would come. Before I knew it, 2 hours had passed without any contact from my husband. Had something happened to him? A foreboding feeling crossed my mind. Perhaps it would be easier to get in touch if I went home. With that thought, I hurried home. I hoped my husband was safe. Praying over and over, I arrived home and was shocked as I opened the front door. Because an unexpected scene unfolded before my eyes. Well, you're late. Were you waiting alone at the harbor all this time for me? That must have been tough. The man looking down at me with a mocking smile was unmistakably my husband. And for some reason, he was packing his things into a duffel bag. Why are you home? You remember we had plans today, right? Despite my concern, my husband burst out laughing noisily. Oh, of course. How did it feel to be stood up and left alone at the harbor? Or did you end up eating a dinner for two all by yourself? This was not the gentle and calm man I knew. What's going on? Why has he changed so suddenly? I couldn't understand the situation. And what's with that outfit? A 43-year-old woman shouldn't dress like that. Were you trying to lure me to bed with that? It makes me sick. I don't need you anymore. Ah, this must be a dream. This man isn't my husband. He wouldn't say such terrible things. I kept telling myself this, but my mind went blank. What are you crying for? I don't want to see an old lady's tears. I made a mistake marrying you. I should have chosen a younger, more vibrant woman. Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my cheeks. I desperately want to wake from this nightmare. My husband's taunts and harsh words only got worse. Deceiving you was easy. A little sweet talk and you fell right for it. The first time I saw your house, I decided I would take it over. Just a plain office worker paying off this room's mortgage must have been tough. Thanks to that, the contract went smoothly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What do you mean take over? What contract? As I trembled, my husband continued as if to deliver the final blow. The purpose of marrying you was to get this house. I was never interested in a plain old lady like you. But living with you has been so boring. I thought I could have a more luxurious life, but you're so frugal, it's no fun being with you at all. And each of his words pierced my heart. Unconcerned, he continued to raise his voice. What fertility treatments? It's too late for you. Be grateful that someone like me would even touch a plain, dreary old lady like you. Actually, I have a mistress, and she's pregnant. From his duffel bag, he pulled out what appeared to be new baby clothes. It's all about youth. My mistress is 23. You get it, right? Just give up. I felt the blood drain from my body and I collapsed to the floor on my knees. We keep our finances separate. We don't know each other's income or savings. But lately, my husband had been asking me for more money for living expenses. I never imagined he was spending it on his mistress. It seems their meeting was at a nightclub. My husband had squandered my money there and succeeded in having a relationship with the then #1 girl, leading to her pregnancy. She knows how to spend money well and is fun to be with. My self-absorbed husband kept insulting me relentlessly. We're getting a divorce because I'm going to live in a different high-rise with her. The sale of this house is already settled. You better get out soon. His scream was terrifying. There's no way you could sell the house without my consent. Faced with my husband's all-too-real tale, I raised my voice in disbelief. It was a lot of work. I had to go to the office multiple times to gather various documents, and the trickiest part was getting your certificate. Look, this one. My husband threw my driver's license at me. It seems he had taken it from my wallet while I was sleeping, along with important documents like the house's title deed. He had gone to the real estate agent with these documents and his mistress. Apparently, his mistress had applied makeup to look older, resembling the photo on my driver's license. Could a real transaction have really been completed like that? A real estate agent's eyes aren't so easily fooled. My husband must be mistaken. In any case, what my husband did is a crime. If he truly did this, it shouldn't go unpunished. I need to investigate thoroughly. My tears had stopped as if they were a lie, and I had regained my composure. That's why this house isn't yours anymore. I decided to take all the money from the sale, so you are no longer needed. You have 3 days to pack your things and get out. He threw the divorce papers at me. His part was already filled out. Fine, I'll sign the divorce papers. But in return, can I have back all my important documents and my driver's license? If the sale is complete, you won't need them anymore. My husband readily agreed to my request, returned all the items to me, and left through the front door. He was probably heading to the high-rise where his mistress lives. Absolutely unforgivable. This is marriage fraud. As anger welled up inside me, I regretted my foolishness for believing in such a man, and tears overflowed again. My husband had never really seen me for who I am. He was after a glamorous and luxurious life in a high-rise. He had used me just for that. Alone, I entered the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. Curling up in a fetal position, I hugged myself and then lost consciousness. Exhausted and shocked, I had apparently fallen into a deep sleep. 3 days later, my husband contacted me. On the phone, he was a different person, his voice rough as he yelled into my ear. "Hey! You better be ready. As promised, you're leaving today." Struggling to calm my outrage at this injustice, I responded. "Just wait. We were married for a year, weren't we? If we're going to split, I want to do it properly. Can I meet your mistress?" There was no way I was going to back down quietly. I have my pride too. Surprisingly, my husband readily agreed to my request, and we decided to meet at a cafe near the station. "Hey there, pathetic single old lady. This is my girlfriend. Unlike you, she's hundreds of times younger and cuter." As soon as my husband entered the cafe, he found me and raised his voice without caring about the other patrons. His mistress, sitting next to him, was emanating a strong perfume scent, wearing a tight dress that highlighted her figure, with her heavily made-up face and golden long hair brushed aside. She sneered through her nose as if triumphant. "You really are beautiful, different from me. How did you manage to impersonate me and go to the real estate agent?" Flattered by my words, the mistress began to spill the details. She had dyed her hair black just for that day, and disguised herself with a hat and glasses. She drew wrinkles on her face with eyeliner and, when asked anything by the real estate agent, she would only nod or shake her head without speaking. I just sat there. He did all the talking. And now we're getting a lot of money, right? It's easy money. Such a suspicious pair, the real estate agent must have had doubts. Selling a house isn't that easy. Amazing, really impressive. There might be a chance the real estate agent will contact me later. Could you tell me the name of the person in charge? The more I flattered her, the more the mistress got carried away. She was the perfect person to gather information from. "One last thing, are you really prepared to stay with my husband for the future?" I looked intently into the mistress's eyes. Her thick false eyelashes and deep black eyeliner. They were heavily applied. "Of course. He's kind and has money. I'm going to quit my tough night job and live a life of luxury in a high-rise from now on. Plus, there's a baby in my belly." This mistress was ultimately after the money too. Unaware of this, my husband was smitten by his young girlfriend. I handed them the divorce papers. However, my section was still blank. Wait. Why haven't you written anything? Hurry up and write. Otherwise, we can't get married." The mistress panicked more than expected. Was she that eager for my husband's wealth? "Yes, since you're going to have a child, I'll concede. The unborn child is innocent." I signed and stamped the blank section, completing the form. "I'll take care of submitting it." The mistress hurriedly snatched the divorce papers, carelessly folded them, and stuffed them into her bag with a sigh of relief. My husband, as always, sat arrogantly, looking triumphant. I took one last look at their ugly demeanor and stood up from my seat. "Thank you. I wish you happiness. Also, wait a week before moving out. There are many procedures to handle like water and gas, it's impossible to do it all in 3 days." Reluctantly, my husband agreed. I left them in the cafe and walked away briskly. The place I hurriedly headed to next was the familiar real estate office. In fact, 3 nights before my husband dramatically declared his intention to divorce, I received a call from an acquaintance who works at that real estate office, while I was utterly exhausted. Ironically, the real estate office my husband visited with his disguised mistress to sell the house was one I had a long-standing relationship with, and the agent there was an acquaintance of mine. The agent, who knew me well, was reportedly astonished to see the mistress in disguise. Due to their professional position, they couldn't ask detailed questions about the unusual situation or they might face a complaint for poor service, so they handled it all very formally. Doubting the suspicious pair and the sale of a house under my name, the agent hesitated to finalize a sale agreement and instead urged the mistress to sign a mediation contract. Unaware and not bothering to read the documents carefully, the two believed it was a sale contract. And they left the real estate office in high spirits, thinking they had finalized the sale. There's a reason why I have a familiar relationship with the real estate office. In fact, I am the owner of this high-rise and own several other properties. My total assets amount to $2.6 billion. Thus, my relationship with the real estate office is profound. People might wonder how such a plain office worker could own so much real estate. It's the result of investing the inheritance from my parents and my earnings from stocks and other investments. Spending money isn't just about flashily playing around and throwing it down the drain. Starting with little, saving diligently can eventually grow into a significant amount. Even after getting married, somewhere in my heart, I could not fully trust my husband. I feared revealing my true identity might destroy our good marital relationship or change his personality if he knew about the money. Keeping major details secret, preparing for any possible issues. Little did I know that he would misuse this information, and upon accidentally finding the house's title deed in the drawer, he concocted this wicked plan. However, I also bear some blame for not realizing before marriage what a worthless man he was. But what my husband did is a crime. I confirmed this with the real estate agent handling our case. His actions should not be forgiven. Afterward, I distributed my husband's photo to several real estate agents I am on good terms with. Quickly, the information spread, and my husband was blacklisted by all real estate agencies in the area as a suspected fraudster. Sure enough, my husband was planning asset management with the anticipated proceeds from the house sale, arrogantly touring real estate offices thinking he was about to come into a large sum of money. Oblivious to what was actually happening, he remained foolishly optimistic. And then the promised week passed. My ex-husband, accompanied by his mistress, came to my house. He was naive, believing that with the divorce was processed, and he finally owned the house. Full of joy and expectation, he confidently opened the front door. However, a harsh reality far beyond his imagination awaited him. "Hey! What is this? Why haven't you moved out? I told you! You had 1 week to leave." Only his belongings were left in the entrance. I had not made any preparations to move. Furious, they began to shout. "This is my house. You are the ones who should leave. Look, I've packed your things, so take them and get out quickly." No matter how much they raged and hurled insults, I remained calm. I told myself to take a deep breath. "Don't talk nonsense, you crazy old woman. Didn't I tell you? I've already sold this house. I handled all the procedures. I'll show you the evidence if you want." His face red, my ex-husband seemed about to leap at me, his eyes filled with more madness than a drunkard who had once accosted me. But I stared him down fearlessly. "What's that attitude for? If you can't listen to me, maybe I should make it so you can't talk at all, you crazy old woman." He charged at me from the doorway. Just then, the real estate agent emerged from the living room. "Please wait. You are mistaken. The house sale has not been finalized yet. The process is still ongoing." The agent stepped between us, stopping my ex-husband's advance. Anticipating such a scenario, I had asked him to be present. "What do you mean now? I definitely signed the contract papers at that time. Are you saying you tricked us? Are you a scam artist? I'll sue you." My ex-husband grabbed the real estate agent by the shirt. The agent urged my ex-husband to calm down, but his anger only escalated. This man is the real estate agent I've always relied on. He did nothing wrong, he's committed no crime. My words only seemed to infuriate my ex-husband more, and he continued to rave. "I never told you, but I own this condo. There's no one in the local real estate circles who doesn't know me. You really thought you could sell the house with such a foolish disguise and no knowledge whatsoever." At that moment, my ex-husband's face turned pale, and suddenly, silence fell. "What you did is a crime. You're the one who's going to be sued. I've already filed a complaint with the police." It's only a matter of time before you're arrested. In fact, in the cafe, I had been recording everything. The mistress's confession, carelessly made without any hesitation, along with the real estate documents and security camera footage, had all the evidence I needed. This is a clear case of fraud. Sweat suddenly broke out on my ex-husband's forehead, and his face turned as red as a volcano about to erupt, as he seemed ready to pounce on me like a wild beast. The agent struggled to restrain him. Then, in a change of direction, my ex-husband tried to punch the agent. At that moment, there was a dull thud as my ex-husband's body flew through the air and hit the floor. Ouch! What are you doing? The agent is a skillful in judo. He had used a simple throw to subdue him, ensuring no further victims and calming my ex-husband. It was self-defense. Just in case, I have cameras installed in this room, which will serve as solid evidence. My ex-husband had no escape. Then, suddenly drained of energy, he sprawled out on the floor, looking up at the ceiling. Wait, what's going on? All that disguise and acting for a big payday, and now I won't get a penny? And now I'm a criminal too? I was just deceived by this old man. I did nothing wrong. From her previously triumphant demeanor, the mistress now looked panicked and bewildered. I was a fool to believe someone like you. This penniless old man. It was all about the money for you. The pregnancy was a lie. If we had gotten married and secured a large sum, I was planning to say I miscarried and then leave you. I was never interested in an old man like you. Everyone was shocked at the mistress's words. Who would have thought that she, too, was a marriage scam artist? Creeping on young women is just gross, you dirty old man. I'll pack your things and leave them outside the front door, so take them and get out of my house. After screaming, the mistress dashed out the front door. The sound of her heels echoed through the hallway. Soon they faded away, and silence returned. I'm sorry. This is how it is. I won't appear before you again. I'm leaving this town. So, could you please drop the criminal charges? Exhausted, my ex-husband summoned his last bit of energy and pressed his forehead to the floor towards me. But no matter how much he apologized, it was too late. He needed to face the consequences of his actions, and I firmly rejected his request. Thus, our battle came to a close. Later, I heard that my ex-husband and his mistress were arrested. They denied the charges until the end, but the numerous pieces of evidence led to their arrest. Months later, spring arrived again. I returned to my solitary life, commuting between my company and home. One day, I got a call from the real estate agent I used to deal with. He wanted to talk to me. We met at a nearby park. On a calm Sunday afternoon, we sat next to each other under a cherry tree. He seemed different than usual. Somewhat nervous. Suddenly, he stood up. I've always loved you. But because of my position, I couldn't express my feelings to you. However, I can't hide it anymore. I've decided to let you know so that no such awful man can take you away again. His cheeks flushed, he looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, almost boyish. It turns out he had always cared for me. In fact, he is the second son of the president of a well-known major real estate company, and it was deemed inappropriate to be romantically involved with an important client. Therefore, he had suppressed his feelings towards me. His family is wealthy, and the company will be inherited by his older brother. Now that he has arranged to start his own business, he saw it as the perfect opportunity to confess his feelings. You should be yourself more. Do what you love, wear the clothes you like, and enjoy both your work and personal life. My modest appearance was merely a facade. Following my parents' advice not to flaunt wealth, I had hidden my true self. I know your true beauty. I saw you at a real estate party once, dressed so elegantly and the center of attention among men. For me, you were always out of reach. Now that I'm setting out on my own, I intend to be worthy of you. To think that someone who really saw me for who I am was so close all along. I nodded with a smile to the man gazing earnestly at me. The falling cherry blossoms seemed to bless us. I'm moving back to my childhood home next month. Out of the blue, my eldest son Bob showed up at my house with a smirk on his face and announced that his wife, Catherine, is busy shopping on her phone at home, leaving their 2 children to run wild, and nonchalantly said, "Please take care of the 2 grandkids." After all the times they disregarded me, the moment they found out I was living in a condo, they switched their attitude just like that. I felt the need to teach these 2 a lesson about the real world not always going their way. My name is Janet. I turned 64 this year. I lost my husband 2 years ago and now live alone in the house where I raised my 2 boys. Both of my children are boys, aged 38 and 36. Both of them have their own families and live in nearby apartments. Siblings are often so different, someone once said, and that's precisely the case in our family. My eldest son turned out to be flashy and careless, while my younger son grew up to be modest and dependable. Bob and his wife Catherine were blessed with 2 kids, but unfortunately, David and his wife haven't been able to have children. It seems there might be an issue with one of them, but I always made sure not to bring it up. However, Catherine, whenever she meets David's wife, insensitively teases, "Oh, still no baby? You better hurry up," and often suggests that David's wife should practice while they can and pushes her own children onto her. But David's wife loves children and, ignoring the insensitive comments from her sister-in-law, looks after the kids with joy. I often thought it would have been better if it were the other way around. To begin with, when my husband was hospitalized, even when I asked Bob and his wife to visit, they'd say, "Oh, we're busy." Besides, you must have free time without having to care for him, right? Can you babysit for a day or 2, and just drop off their children? On the other hand, David and his wife visited regularly. David's wife would reassure me, "Don't be down, Mrs. Janet. He'll get better. Do you want us to stay overnight if it's not too much trouble?" She cooked for me when I was emotionally down and also took care of my grandkids. During that time, Bob and his wife were actually on a trip to Las Vegas, gambling away at casinos. Upon return, without asking about the kids, they immediately asked to borrow money, saying, "We lost everything. We're a bit tight this month, can you help us out?" I held back my anger and firmly declined, "We don't have any money. Just look at this old house." Catherine looked around my 60-year-old house and laughed, "Right, I mean, who still has turned faucets nowadays? So outdated." She added, "Well, at least it's old, so we don't worry about the kids breaking stuff." Even when I bought presents for my adorable grandkids on their birthdays or Christmas, Bob and Catherine never thanked me. Instead, they'd just complain, "This is kinda lame. Couldn't you have gotten something cooler?" In reality, I went to the toy store with the grandkids and bought what they chose. Being blamed for having bad taste was simply unbearable. I wanted to see my adorable grandkids, and I was concerned about whether Bob and Catherine were taking proper care of them. Catherine works and often asks me, "Can you pick up the kids from daycare?" She seems to frequently skip her duties to go out drinking with friends. Bob, on the other hand, seems to leave all child rearing to Catherine and doesn't help at all. On the days I pick them up, the grandkids often end up staying overnight, and I often drop them off at daycare the next morning. Even so, Catherine doesn't thank me and says, "You live alone, Mrs. Janet, so you must be happy taking care of the grandkids. Thanks and see ya." The 2 children were so used to being at my place that they sometimes fussed when it was time to go home. Of course, spending time with my grandkids was a joy, but considering Bob and Catherine's attitude towards parenting, I couldn't help but worry. The final straw between me and Bob's family was when I had to be admitted for some medical tests due to prolonged fatigue. Bob and Catherine called, which was rare. Apparently, my grandkid was worried and wanted to hear my voice. "Grandma, are you in the hospital? Does it hurt?" came the lisping voice of my grandchild, and I couldn't help but smile. "It's okay. They're just checking me out. Thank you. Come back soon." I'm being a good boy. After my grandson's voice faded away, I waited a moment, and it seemed they had left the phone off the hook because I began to hear Bob and Catherine's conversation. Really, I can't deal with taking care of the elderly. David can handle that, right? He doesn't have kids and surely has some extra money, doesn't he? Well, yeah, that's probably for the best. Mom doesn't have much money anyway. Honestly, what's the use of an old person without money? Just a burden, right? They must have thought they hung up the phone, as I could clearly hear their candid remarks. I mean, how can she even live in that old shack? If it were me, I'd have left a long time ago. Mom has always been frugal, never even bought decent clothes. It was embarrassing growing up. I knew they didn't think highly of me, but hearing it so blatantly was heart-wrenching. I couldn't help but respond, "I'm sorry to have disappointed you." Hearing my voice, Catherine chuckled without a hint of guilt. "Oh, Janet, were you listening?" Oops, we didn't hang up. Bob, seemingly unbothered, said, "Well, it's the truth. Why was I born into such a plain family? I've always felt like I drew the short straw when it came to parents. I had tried to raise them without spoiling them, but it seemed to have backfired." I sighed and simply said, "I'm gonna hang up now," and ended the call. As it turned out, my hospital tests didn't show any issues, I was just exhausted. I was set to return home safely. On the day I was discharged, a Saturday, David was working, so his wife accompanied me. However, when we got home, the door was unlocked, and my 2 grandkids were playing in the living room alone. They're 3 and 5 years old, so of course, the place is a mess. "Grandma, welcome back." They ran up to me, but Bob and Catherine were nowhere in sight. "Where's your mom and dad?" David's wife asked, and they replied, "They said they're cleaning the house and told us to stay here and behave." David's wife and I exchanged glances, knowing full well that Bob and Catherine wouldn't clean. As we quietly went upstairs, we found them rummaging through my drawers. "What are you doing?" When I shouted at them, they coolly turned around. "Oh, Janet, you're back? We didn't know you were being discharged today." Catherine gave a bright smile, and Bob said in an unusually kind tone, "Why didn't you tell us you were being discharged? I would have come to pick you up." Sensing my discomfort, Catherine handed me a document, saying, "You're quite sneaky, Janet. Hiding this from us?" It was a copy of a lease for a condo on the 50th floor of a tower nearby. Bob, grinning, said, "It's like $3,000 a month. Why'd you keep this a secret? Did you use Dad's inheritance or something? If so, we have a right to it too." After glancing over the document again, he confidently declared, "We'll move into the family home next month." When I responded with a confused "what?" Bob said, "Well, you know, you are getting older. You were hospitalized this time too. Living alone's a concern, you've been saying it for a while now, right?" He then looked to Catherine for agreement, and she chimed in, "Exactly. This house is old, and if anything happened, it'd be a mess," making a concerned face. It seemed like they both had completely forgotten about a phone call from a few days ago. How forgetful can they be? And why were they looking for a house behind my back in the first place? Seeing our disbelief, Catherine winked and cheekily said, "Do take care of the grandkids, will you?" The usually quiet daughter-in-law finally lost her temper. "Hold on. What's going on? You're just gonna barge into the condo that my mother-in-law rented? That's way out of line. What were you even thinking?" But Bob and his wife didn't even flinch. "I mean, it's kind of funny thinking of Mom living in a fancy condo, right? She'd stand out like a sore thumb. If we live with her, it'll look better, don't you think?" Catherine added, "You wouldn't understand if you don't have kids. Moms like me want to raise our children in a decent place. I'm saying this for the kids. Surely, you'd agree that every day would be more fun with the grandkids around," she said, attacking David's wife, who didn't have children. "You people," David's wife exclaimed, biting her lip in frustration, readying to say something more. However, I stopped her with a hand gesture. It's all right, thank you. Can I handle this? I then confronted Bob and his wife. Next month works for you? I asked. I'll be ready. David's wife looked at me in surprise. But after catching a significant glance from me, she seemed to understand and kept quiet. Unaware of our silent exchange, Bob and his wife cheerfully said, "All right, we've decided. Let's get ready for the move. We want furniture that's fitting for a luxury apartment. Should we head to a high-end furniture store now?" That sounds great. Oh, and Janet, please take care of the kids for us, they joyfully said and left. Seeing the worried look on Bob's wife's face, I winked at her, imitating Catherine, and told her about my upcoming plan. A plan to teach them that not everything goes as one expects. The next month arrived, and Bob and his wife eagerly informed me about their moving day. We're gonna live in that sunny room. We bought all new furniture and appliances. Don't bring anything outdated, okay? Both of them were very excited, picturing their luxury condo life. Okay, I got it. I'll make sure everything's prepared, I casually replied and started my own moving preparations. As instructed, I discarded all the old furniture and belongings, minimizing my possessions. I've always heard that as you get older, it becomes harder to part with things. So, I took this as a perfect opportunity to declutter, especially for the sake of my children. On the day Bob was set to move, I was busy since morning unpacking my own belongings. Since my phone was on silent, I didn't notice any incoming calls. When noon arrived and I decided to take a break, I checked my phone. To my surprise, there had been relentless calls from Bob since 9 a.m. Realizing this, I teasingly stuck out my tongue and called Bob back. He answered immediately, yelling, "Why weren't you picking up?" "Oh, I'm sorry. My phone was on silent." "So, what happened?" "What happened? We went to the condo and when we rang the doorbell, some stranger answered, asking who we were." "The luxury condo? Did you go there?" "Well, yeah. We said we were moving to the family home, remember? We had a huge argument with the person in that apartment. The police even got involved. It was so embarrassing." "Where are you, Mom?" "I'm in my new place." "What? Then why's someone else living there?" "You said you were moving to the family home, right?" That's why I cleaned it up for you. I assumed you had the keys. Feel free to use it however you like." "Oh, I'll transfer the deed soon." "Wait a minute. That family home, you don't mean?" "Yes, the one you grew up in. That's the family home, isn't it?" After a brief pause, I could hear Catherine's voice in the background. "What are you doing? The movers are saying they'll charge us extra if we make them wait any longer. Hurry up and vacate the condo." "Oh no, the furniture delivery's here." "Hey, that's our luxury bed. What are you gonna do?" Hearing her frantic voice, I couldn't help but almost burst out laughing. It's a pity I couldn't share this moment with David's wife. Bob, with a trembling voice, muttered it wasn't here. The family home. Then, Catherine's puzzled voice could be heard, "What?" "That family home, it seems to be our old house." After another pause, Catherine, having finally understood the situation, exclaimed in disbelief, "What the heck?" I replied, trying to hold back my laughter, "Just move your things there. I'm busy with unpacking. Take care," and was about to hang up when Bob interjected. "Hold on. Where are you now, Mom?" "Why would I tell you that? If you come here, I won't be pleased. If I need something, I'll come over. Bye." Bob continued to protest, but I simply hung up. Keeping my phone on silent, I continued unpacking in my new apartment. Turns out, that luxury condo contract was just a provisional one, and I canceled it the day after Bob found out. It hurt to lose the deposit, but it was much more infuriating to see Bob and his wife have their way. I've always admired those luxury condo, and with top-tier security and amenities, I decided to give it a shot. However, I soon realized it might have been a bit too extravagant for me, so this incident was the push I needed to reconsider. Now, I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment with assisted living features. It even has a gym, and with 24/7 concierge service, it's perfect for me living alone. Bob and his wife thought I was broke, but in reality, I'd been studying and investing while being a homemaker and had managed to earn enough for both my children's education. After my husband passed away, a hefty life insurance payout and inheritance came through. Investing half of that sum turned out to be quite profitable. I had decided to take a leap of faith and try something adventurous, but I guess God always has a plan. Living in that luxury condo, I must have gotten a bit too carried away. Anyway, I thought it all turned out for the best and filled David's wife in on everything that happened today. She laughed heartily, saying, "Oh, that's hilarious." I would have loved to see Bob and Catherine's faces at that moment. I wish I had seen it too. We both burst out laughing. Then, David's wife curiously mentioned, "But it's odd, isn't it? Bob and Catherine don't work for any big-name companies, yet they act so posh. How can they afford such a lifestyle?" Indeed, while David and his wife both work for reputable companies, Bob works for some no-name firm. And Catherine? She's been in and out of jobs from some temp agency. Despite all this, they were always buying designer brands. I always wondered where they got the money from. Later on, it turned out they were drowning in debt. They had likely been searching my house, hoping I had some hidden assets. They're just plain gold diggers. In the end, having no place else to go, they reluctantly moved into the old family home they once mocked, filling it with mismatched luxury furniture and electronics. When I tried to discuss changing the deed through my attorney, Bob proposed, "Since I can't afford the property taxes, could you possibly rent it to me? Maybe for about $200 a month?" It's ironic. He was aiming to live in a $3,000 a month luxury apartment, yet now he's haggling over $200. Reluctantly, I proposed $700, and they grudgingly agreed. Even at that rate, it's a steal for that area. Neighbors say they often hear the two of them getting drunk and arguing loudly. I was concerned about their two kids, but David's wife occasionally checked on them and updated me, saying, "They seem okay for now, but they mentioned they miss their grandma and looked sad." I had been considering visiting them soon, but before I could, Catherine disappeared, apparently running off with another man. Bob was left devastated and became distrustful of women. His once confident demeanor faded. There were rumors that Catherine, heavily made up, was spotted hanging on to men in the city's nightlife scene, but nothing's been confirmed. After Catherine left, David's wife, Bob, and I discussed the kids' future. Bob admitted he couldn't raise them on his own. Indeed, without someone to maintain the house, it was in utter chaos. David and his wife kindly offered to adopt the kids. The process went smoothly, and they're now David's children. Since Bob hadn't finalized his divorce from Catherine and she hadn't been officially missing for 7 years, he couldn't remarry. Moreover, the debt collectors are more aggressive than ever. He's now silently working his day job and takes a night shift at a convenience store to make ends meet. It seems he pawned most of his luxury items. The confident man I once knew looked like a shadow of his former self. Whenever I'd bring him some food, he'd sometimes tear up as he ate. It appears he's finally started to understand human emotions. When David's wife visits with the kids, he'd gratefully say, "They're growing up so well. Thank you." I still hold out hope that someday, he'll find someone kind and understanding. But maybe I'm just being a hopelessly optimistic mom. "Then get out of here, you worthless scum." I never imagined hearing such words, especially right after buying our new home as newlyweds. My husband, Bob, was extremely kind and gentlemanly when we were dating, but now he acts as if he shed that kind facade, treating me horribly. Since his parents moved in with us, things have become even worse. I feel like I have no allies in this house. But Bob is completely unaware of the true story behind this house and its ownership. It's about time I come clean and tell Bob and his parents the truth. These people, thinking men are superior, are in for a shock. How dare they tell me to leave? They'll soon realize they're too late. My name is Sarah. We got married just last year. Before getting married, my days were filled with going back and forth between work and home, and I had often wondered about my future. Seeing my high school and college friends getting married one after the other, I began to think maybe it'd be nice to share my life with someone. It's cliché to say, but finding someone is a mix of luck and fate, and things don't always go as planned. However, my life took an unexpected turn. Excuse me, did you drop this key? That simple incident at a mixer led me to meet my current husband, Bob. I had carelessly dropped my house key, and he picked it up for me. Our conversation took off from there. That keychain, did you go to that concert? Yes. A friend invited me, and I became an instant fan. Do you know about it? I'm a huge fan, too. I have the same keychain but in a different color. Showing me his variant of the keychain, he continued. What a coincidence. I don't know many people who are fans. This is exciting. Same here. Would you like to chat for a bit? Our shared love for the concert and the artist led to a spirited conversation, which then transitioned to a cafe nearby. We exchanged numbers, and our relationship grew quickly from there. Life is full of surprises. Meeting someone with shared interests and getting married made me incredibly happy. Married life was blissful at first, but I distinctly remember the day the storm clouds began to gather. Bob started opposing the idea of me working full-time. People will think I'm making my wife work, you know? Couples working together is the norm nowadays. Besides, I've been working since I graduated from college. You're okay with people thinking I can't provide for you? Saying that, he aggressively bit into his dinner roll. I want to be the main breadwinner, and I want you to primarily take care of the home. So, you want me to be a stay-at-home wife? Yeah, but not entirely. Maybe you could work part-time or something. Just because you say so doesn't mean I'll find a part-time job easily. You were just doing basic clerical work, after all. I'll look the other way until you find something. Just do your best. I didn't understand why, even when I was willing to comply with Bob's wishes, I was still subjected to such demeaning comments. Referring to one's wife as just someone doing basic clerical work and being condescending was unsettling. I began to dread our future together. Luckily, I found a suitable remote job, ensuring a steady income equivalent to part-time work. While Bob earned outside, I balanced work from home with household chores. It seemed to be working out well for a while. But then, something happened that shook our relationship to its core. One day, I overheard Bob on the phone. He seemed quite agitated. Though I couldn't hear the conversation, my curiosity was piqued. Hey, what's been going on since this morning? Did someone call? Yeah. My mom seems to have twisted her ankle falling down the stairs. Apparently, it's worse than she thought, and she can't even walk properly. Oh, that's tough. How long do you think it'll take her to recover? Bob then looked at me with an expression that seemed like he had a bright idea. How about we let my mom stay with us until she heals? It would allow her to focus on her recovery. But if your dad's with her, we don't necessarily need to have her move in with us. Dad's getting on in age. You expect him to handle all the chores and care by himself? Sarah, you're at home, so help out. I couldn't argue with Bob once he put it that way. Sometimes Bob can be very logical, and he tends to bombard me with sound arguments that disrupt my train of thought. I didn't mean it that way. But considering your dad's age and needing to support your mom on top of household chores, it must be a handful. When I was younger, I caused my parents a lot of trouble. It's not exactly paying them back, but I just want to do something for them. Hearing Bob's words, I felt ashamed, realizing I'd only been thinking of myself. That's very considerate of you, Bob. If that's the case, I'll be glad to help out. But I've only met your parents a handful of times, so the idea of living together, even for a short period, is a bit nerve-wracking. Don't worry. My mom and dad won't bite. Just be yourself. Bob tried to brush it off with laughter, but in hindsight, I wish I could go back and kick my past self for even considering living together so lightly. It's too reckless to suddenly live with people you barely know. I wish I could warn my past self right now. Initially, living with Bob's parents seemed to go well. However, the harmonious balance began to shift over time. While my father-in-law was all right, my mother-in-law seemed to have an opinion about everything I did. Sarah, isn't the rice a bit bland? I'm sorry. You're not serving this kind of rice in Bob's lunchbox, are you? Yes, I often pack leftovers for Bob's lunch. My mother-in-law let out a big sigh and glared at me. Leftovers in the lunchbox? Aren't you supposed to think about what your husband might want to eat that day and make it fresh in the morning? Just throwing in yesterday's food. Is that such a big deal? Watching our exchange, Bob, instead of supporting me, sided with his mother. That's right, Sarah. You're always at home, but you can't even properly prepare lunch. It's a bit disappointing. You can't even fulfill your duties as a wife and still have a full plate of food. I was at my wit's end with the constant nitpicking that felt like a scene from a soap opera. My father-in-law would glance my way when I was being criticized, but quickly look away again. If I continued this way, I felt like I'd mentally and physically break down. Initially, before we got married, we both agreed we wouldn't live with either of our parents. But now, to have them suddenly move in with the newlyweds and face a constant barrage of passive-aggressive remarks, what was this all about? I reached my limit and tried to discuss the situation with Bob. But his evident annoyance became clear. No matter how much I spoke up, Bob wouldn't truly listen. So, I decided to approach my mother-in-law with humility, hoping she might be more understanding. Can I talk to you for a moment? What is it, out of the blue? To be honest, Bob and I have our way of doing things and our own routines. I thought it might be good to review how we live together and see if there's any advice you could give to help us all get along better. She snorted and turned her head. Reviewing your lifestyle? Isn't that just a result of your own lack of effort? And casually addressing the mother of the head of the family like that? I'm sorry. I just thought we should try to find a compromise so we can all live together more comfortably. I mustered the courage to speak. If she thought I'd stay silent and let her walk all over me, she was sorely mistaken. I hoped at least that would get through to her. You're trying to kick me out, aren't you? After all, I'm just trying to teach you since you're clearly lacking. Aren't you even grateful? Grateful. Who's teaching you about the customs and traditions of the Johnson family? I've been taking you under my wing and guiding you every step of the way. I'd heard that my mother-in-law also married into the Johnson family, so I wondered how my father-in-law felt about everything. When I tried to catch his eye, he quickly looked away. My mother-in-law, being a woman of many words, could blow things out of proportion. At first, I thought if we lived together, maybe we could at least get along a little. However, as I came to the realization that it was impossible, words just poured out of me. I've had enough. Please leave. Just then, Bob walked in, witnessing the exchange between me and his mother. He turned to me, yelling angrily. Well then, you get out, you good for nothing. He slammed the door open as he shouted. Bob, when did you get home? I got a message from Mom after I finished work that you were being horrible to her. I rushed home and what do I find? You. But I've tried talking to you so many times. I told you I want to get along with your parents, but I just don't know how. Do you always need my advice for everything? This is just like you, never thinking for yourself. That's why you're so useless. He pointed towards the front door, continuing his tirade. You're not fit to be my wife. Until you apologize and Mom forgives you, I won't either, so get that straight. Is this even real? Listen to me for once. Your stories aren't even worth listening to. I've said it before, just get out. His father, who was sipping tea nearby, avoided making eye contact with me. I remember the brief moment when he looked up. His expression was one of unease. Deep down, I was elated that my husband finally said what he wanted to. Holding back my laughter, I decided to remind Bob of some facts. Wait, did you forget? Forget what? Do you not remember everything we went through to buy our house? That was the story of our journey to homeownership. Right after getting married, we started looking for a place to stay and eventually settled on buying our own home. I would have been fine with renting, but Bob was insistent on purchasing a house or apartment. Why not rent for a while? There's so much uncertainty with possible job transfers and children. Plus, saving up some more might get us a better house down the line. Rent? Why would we live in a rental? It's a once-in-a-lifetime purchase, right? Maybe if we save up a little more by renting first, we could get a better home. Bob slammed his hand on the table, raising his voice. That would be too late. With our marriage, I want to act like a proper head of the household. Don't you understand that? Just because you buy a house doesn't mean you've achieved everything. But if you feel that strongly about it, I won't oppose. Still, why are you so obsessed with getting a house right now? Bob responded, clearly agitated. A junior colleague at my office got married last year and bought a house soon after. Oh, the one who transferred here a few years ago? The one you often talk about? Yeah, he came here 3 years ago. Despite being bad at his job, he was sharp about this. I just can't stand that. I was taken aback by Bob's unexpected response. I decided to ask him for more details. Why can't you stand it? Normally, juniors should follow their seniors' lead. If they can't follow this simple hierarchy, how can they be trusted with work? Don't you think so? Everyone's different, Bob. Honestly, I was a bit put off by Bob's apparent jealousy and vanity. However, I knew he had a strong resolve, and once he made up his mind about something, there was no changing it. But the real shock came when we were about to sign the contract and found out we couldn't have the house in Bob's name. Why the heck can't I? I've been working hard in this company right out of college, moving all around the country. There's no way I can't get a simple home loan. There's gotta be some mistake. While Bob was causing a scene, I scanned the document handed to me. At a glance, it stated that there were issues with Bob's credit history, making it impossible to secure a loan. I wondered if maybe we could secure the loan if it was in my name instead of Bob's. I decided to suggest this to him. However, explaining the details to a panicked Bob seemed futile. You just want a mortgage for our house, right? We can request another review with your name, but how about also trying with mine? You think they'd give a loan to a woman? It might be a long shot, but it's worth a try, right? If it goes through the second time, we'll be able to buy our house. I tried to calm a shocked Bob and decided to request another credit check, this time for both of us. To ensure Bob wouldn't be shocked by the results, we had them sent to my parents' place in the neighboring town. Soon, I got the news from my family. The assessment showed that a contract could be made if it was under my name. Unexpectedly, we could secure the contract in my name, and I was relieved when we found out we could get enough for our home purchase. Regardless of whose name it's under, we're buying this house together. I didn't want to ruin his mood, so I only told Bob that we could secure the loan and kept the details about the names a secret. So, in the end, there's no problem securing the loan, right? Yeah, now we can finally have our dream home. All's well that ends well. I knew it. There had to be a mistake. How could they deny a contract to someone who's been with a major corporation for years? Name value matters, doesn't it? I didn't want to burst the now upbeat Bob's bubble. Truth be told, the house contract and mortgage are all in my name. Now, the reason we had to secure the home loan in my name and not Bob's is significant. Bob's carefree nature. I knew he'd previously borrowed student loans but hadn't always paid them back on time. I won't forget seeing his apartment's mailbox stuffed to the brim with letters. Don't you check your mail? You might have some urgent or important stuff in there. I'll check when I feel like it. Sarah, you really notice the little things. Back then, I couldn't press further, but I did notice some overdue notices. Looking back, our marriage has been full of mishaps. His credit cards often got declined because he didn't keep enough money in the bank. This recurring issue eventually led to his card being terminated. When I noticed credit card bills cluttering our home table, some were already overdue by 6 months. Hey, about those letters on the table. The ones with the payment slips? I'm not sure about them. I'm too busy. Can you handle it? Can't you just take a look at what it's for? Suddenly, Bob became irritated and grumbled his way to the bedroom. I've got work to do. Can't you handle such trivial matters? I'll never forget how he just carelessly shoved his responsibilities onto me without even giving it a proper look. I went and made the payment as he asked, but given the significantly overdue deadline, it was no surprise his credit card was no longer usable. Considering the student loans and credit card debts, it's no stretch to imagine that Bob's credit history was a mess. Despite it being his own affairs, did he not remember? The words almost left my lips. Before our home purchase, Bob's carefree nature caused a lot of issues. I wonder if his mother is even aware of his credit problems and his inability to secure any loans or credit cards. Bob, seemingly recalling something after hearing my words, wore a startled expression. You're not saying the house contract is under your name, right? There's no way you, a woman, could handle that. Then, noticing Bob's demeanor, his mother chimed in. What's the matter? This house belongs to Bob, the head of this family. You should just leave if you have an issue. Since when did this house become Bob's? It's always been his from the start. In fact, if you want to stay, maybe you should get on your knees and beg. For his mother to say something so ridiculous. Ignorance is a sin, and it's embarrassing. It felt like that phrase was made for her. Could you please stay quiet for a moment? If it makes you feel better, you can kneel before me right now. Why should Bob or I bow down to the likes of you? I got up from the chair and muttered to myself. Where should I start explaining to her? Suddenly, Bob grabbed my shoulder and exclaimed. Stop it! Don't say anything unnecessary to Mom. What's the problem here? Ignoring their voices, I moved away from the dining table and went to retrieve some documents from the safe in the next room. Take a look at these. They were made when we bought the house. His mother briefly glanced at the papers, then tossed them aside. His father picked them up and started scrutinizing them. Sighing, he looked at me, probably pondering something. Is this some contract or something about the house that Bob bought? Look closely. Both the mortgage and the ownership of this house are under my name. His mother almost jumped out of her seat. That's impossible. There's no way a woman could have a contract over the man of the house. Well, it's the truth. All thanks to Bob's careless personality, though. Who are you calling careless? She closed the gap between us in a rush. If she's going to push it this far, it's time to lay all the cards on the table. You mean to tell me you haven't noticed Bob's recklessness? He rarely meets any payment deadlines, and I've had to cover for him most of the time. You really can't believe that? He's been out of the house since high school, so I have no idea about his life after that. And so what if he made a few mistakes at home? Why make a big deal out of it? I handed her a document detailing his credit history. What's this paper? It shows that Bob has no financial integrity because he's careless with money and deadlines. Integrity? What are you talking about? You really don't know? If you did, you'd realize how embarrassing it is to owe money and act like everything's fine. His father was glaring fiercely at both Bob and his mother. I had never seen him look so intense. He's usually reserved and avoids making eye contact. Bob and his mother, on hearing my words, turned beet red and started trembling. What I was telling them had shaken them to their core. You badmouth your own husband. Don't you think you're lacking the awareness of being a wife? His mother always sides with Bob, but there's a limit. I pulled out an envelope. It's not just Bob, ma'am. Taking and spending someone else's money without permission is the start of theft. So now you're calling me a thief? That's a terrible accusation. Who's the real thief here, trying to steal my son from me? She seems upset, thinking I stole Bob from her through marriage. But I calmly told her. There are some strange charges on my credit card statement that I don't recall making. Doesn't that seem odd to you? Why are you pinning this on me? Don't blame others. She's still trying to play innocent. Talk about not knowing when to quit. Didn't you use my credit card at the convenience store near the station last week? Turns out, an acquaintance of mine works there and saw you. You're lying, right? Do you think I am? I can even tell you what you paid for. Want me to list it? So what if I did? Bob's my son, so anything that belongs to him belongs to me too, right? Making a big fuss over nothing. You have no common sense. It's ironic that a woman with no common sense is lecturing me about it. Using someone's credit card without permission is a crime, you know. I might have just confused it with some loyalty card or something. That's not gonna cut it. My friend clearly heard what you were saying. You can't just claim ignorance. I didn't miss the way her cheek twitched. You're so sneaky, always doing things behind the scenes. Who's the sneaky one here? My friend told me you said, it's my daughter-in-law's card, so it's fine, while paying at the register. And you know, that store has security cameras. If I went to the police, they'd take action. You're gonna throw me in jail? Hearing this, Bob chimed in. We're family living under the same roof. Isn't it a bit much to hold a grudge over just a little credit card use? With all the nonsense, I just wanted this to end. I took out my phone and said, I've reached my limit living with the two of you. Let me say it one more time. Leave my house. As I said this, I showed them the phone screen, ready to call the police. If you continue to deny the credit card issue, I'll report it as theft to the police. And I can't live with Bob anymore. You're gonna abandon our marriage just like that? Aren't we supposed to support each other? I never thought I'd hear you talk about mutual support in a marriage. Fine. If you won't leave, I will. Expect the divorce papers soon. Bob pleaded, not wanting a divorce, while his mother kept muttering about the police being a bluff, and his quiet father remained silent as usual. For me, I had said all I needed to. I already consulted with a divorce lawyer, and it was just a matter of letting them handle things. I never imagined they'd be like this, but maybe it was a blessing in disguise to see their true colors so soon. In the end, Bob and I decided to divorce. The lawyer said Bob and his mother resisted until the very end. At first, they were defiant, saying things like, I might still forgive you now and you lack the awareness of being a wife. However, as the lawyer calmly explained everything, their confidence waned. Clearly realizing they had no case, they gave in. After I moved out, Bob and my ex-in-laws continued living in the house without permission. But considering I own the house and we're no longer family, I don't owe them anything. Through the lawyer, I gave them a choice: move out soon or pay a much higher rent than market value. They chose to move out. Furthermore, having seen his wife's true colors during this debacle, my ex-father-in-law surprised everyone by filing for divorce. He had been quiet throughout, but there must have been things he couldn't overlook. Now, he lives alone using his savings, while Bob and his mother seem to be struggling. Bob tried to take care of his mother, but soon after, he faced issues at work. He had been treating a junior coworker terribly at work, which led to reprimands from upper management and resulted in a demotion. Apparently, his salary was cut and his position was lowered. It was quite a sorry state. Eventually, he resigned but hasn't found another job, forcing him to live in poverty. What goes around, comes around. After our split, I've been enjoying my solo life. Not having Bob and his mother around is such a relief. I didn't realize how stress-free it could be. Sometimes their actions still infuriate me, but I focus on my work instead of dwelling on it. Through a friend's recommendation, I started working at a new workplace and find myself tackling unfamiliar tasks every day. In this new environment, I'm also considering obtaining certifications, so my days are pretty busy. But I kinda prefer being busy. It keeps my mind from wandering, making things easier on me. On my days off, I love cafe hopping and enjoying some reading time. It makes me feel truly happy. Right now,